Hi everyone. I wanted to give you a touch point and another overview of some of the next stages of development for your ePortfolio for this class. So obviously, at the beginning of the term, we built out a general ePortfolio framework using some of the um, open content management system platforms that I recommended, such as Weebly, WordPress, Wix, Google Sites as examples. Now, as we're about halfway through the semester, it's a process where it's important for you to start developing out some of the content in your ePortfolio. So I wanted to walk you through some general suggestions that I have in terms of content that you could include. So just as initial starting points, ePortfolios are intended to be customized. So there isn't a one-size-fits-all model for what content you need to have, what it needs to look like, what categories need to be included. Really, it needs to be customized to highlight your personal strengths and experiences. The ePortfolio does need aesthetic appeal, so you need to be attentive to the way in which the user could interact with the site. You want to ensure that there's a sound user experience, it's easy to navigate, aesthetically it's pleasing, and it's very clean. Be very attentive to the detail that you include in your content. So everything from the way in which your spacing is set up between categories, for the way in which you include images or embed videos, just make sure it's very clean and detail oriented. And then, of course, because this ePortfolio is going to be a site to promote you, and it will be a supplemental tool to use in a job search and even develop beyond the job search process as a means for collecting a lot of the work you do in IT, recognize that it should be somewhat technical focused or IT focused. So my recommendation for general categories to consider are the following. So about, projects, professional experiences, blog is optional, and then contact information. So you can obviously customize this to best suit your personal needs, but these are some of my initial recommendations. So the about section, everyone should have a section like this. It doesn't have to be an about section. It could be a profile section or however you want to describe that. But this section is intended to give some background about you. So a brief bio, perhaps your academic background prior to UC, as well as highlighting your UC experience, professional goals that you may have tied to the IT industry. And then this is a place where you could include actually a copy of your resume if you would like, or embed text content from the resume document that you have already created. Projects. This is a great place to highlight anything that you've done IT related, and it could be independent projects done supplemental to classwork, or it could be class related projects. It doesn't matter. But what's important here is to highlight project examples with images, code, links, even text that can provide context to the reader of the ePortfolio and some of the competencies that you have. I always recommend summarizing the projects that you have or giving some type of high-level overview of the project, in recognizing that some of the people that will be visiting your site will not have a sound technical background. So you want to make sure that your content is accessible for them. Professional experiences. This is another one that I think is key. I think it's critical to provide details on past experience related to employment in IT if you have it. If you don't, any type of related employment or professional employment is fine. But you just don't want to emphasize work that isn't necessarily IT related, because that isn't going to be on the radar of most of the company contacts that we're going to be establishing relationships with. Provide specific competencies that you've gained from work. So if there's anything that work experience taught you specifically related to the IT industry, you should include that. And then be very specific about the technical tools that you've used in prior employment, so that it's very clear to someone visiting the site what types of tools you're familiar with and how you could potentially apply those to another professional setting. So the blog, this is an optional category. Don't necessarily need to include this, but if you want to stay actively engaged and communicate with people, A blog is a good way to do this. The Moran text highlights this. I think it's chapter 26 of his book, and gives some really good strategies for how you could create a sound professional blog. I recommend, if you're doing this, make sure it has some type of tech focus rather than something that is non-technical. And you could do things like consider industry trends, specific knowledge you possess, research you're doing, if you have a graduate assistantship, for instance. Any of that would be fantastic. And then blog posts, just as a general recommendation, should generally be pretty concise and to the point. They don't need to be long narratives of 10 or more pages on something content related. Just be concise, be to the point, and recognize that the people that are visiting the site want to be able to get information rather quickly. And then finally, if this is something you'd like to include, feel free to link it to your social media. The final category I have is just your contact information. So you want to make it very easy for the person visiting your site to be able to get in touch with you. So I recommend just a name and email address is fine. A comment box, if you want to embed that within your site, is a good way to ensure that someone has a way to communicate with you. And then if you have other social media sites that you want to promote, you can definitely do this on your ePortfolio, such as LinkedIn or something like that. You can do a direct link there. So anyways, this has been a high-level overview of possible categories to include in an ePortfolio, and hopefully this will be a good starting point for you as you begin building out your framework.